Hey. Happy Tuesday morning. Happy Tuesday morning. So I read an article this morning that's triggered me, and I've been spinning all morning over it, right? For the last few hours, I've dug into some deep work. I've done some transactional work, and I just can't get the headline in the article out of my head. So the headline, and we all know headlines, like the main goal of a headline is to capture attention, right? It's to get your attention. And so it says, amidst job growth, right? Times are tough, right? And it's talking about it, and it was an email from the human resource email list, right? That I'm from the degrees and whatnot. It tends to kind of trend toward more human resource oriented work as it talks about, people and the function of human resource inside of an organization. But I don't really fit in a human resource bucket, right? I'm just not typically that guy, right? So, but the title that times are tough. Well, company growth is a lot like human growth or personal growth, right? It goes in cycles, right? And so companies are responsible for the bottom line frequently, right? Like that's what times are tough, and there's job growth. Well, there's job growth in certain segments. We can always look at the negative, but on the flip side, there's something positive going on somewhere else. That's always the case, right? That it's just change in the marketplace where maybe there once was a need. Now that need has shifted. But more than anything, when I read that headline, what hit me, like what hurt me, was thinking about all of the people as you read down the email, and it talked about all of these layoffs, these companies that are doing layoffs. And I thought about, the fear, again, it kind of exploited the feeling that layoffs cause and some of the secondary actions and, where are all these people going to go? What are they going to do? Well, these people have skills, right? Like if we start to really understand the decoupling, the uncoupling of an individual and the value that they bring, the value that they have, like who they are as a person, right? Separate that from what an organization or what a company needs. And I've had a couple of people message like, man, you've been hard on companies. I'm not hard on companies. I love companies. I love helping companies grow, especially small companies. You think about that kind of under 50 employee or under 30 employee mark. Well, why is that your thing, David? Well, that's my thing because generally speaking, at that size, there's still an owner that's involved that cares about the people. Right? But they care about the people that are there. They want to hire quality people. There's not an issue in the job market. I know plenty of people that are hiring, but they want quality people. What does quality people mean? It's not somebody who can just come in and follow directions, right? It's somebody who wants to come in and make an impact and make a difference. But in order to be that person, an individual has to understand what they bring to the table, who they are in totality, right? The value that they can bring, not just, the transactional nature of their work, but truly the instrumental value that they bring when they bring all of themselves to the workplace, right? To a team, to an organization. And generally speaking, in smaller companies, they can be seen there. And smaller companies recognize the impact that a person like that can make. But in larger organizations, generally speaking, it's easy to come in and just do the thing, punch the buttons, and leave and clock out at the end of the day. And if that's what you're after, there's also plenty of companies that are out there that are looking for that as well. But don't be surprised when the layoffs happen that you're there, right? Like that you're a part of that list that gets to go find another opportunity, because that's not what organizations today need. They need people who can keep up with the changing environment that's happening in business, right? And individuals have to decouple where those responsibilities lie, right? That we have to stop abdicating responsibility for ourselves to an organization and expecting them to solve the problems. Like the days of the industrial age of, hey, I'm going to work here for 35 years and they're going to take care of me and everything's going to be perfect. Those days are gone. The industrial age is gone. Like COVID was the catalyst that pushed the technology age into fruition. Like if you look back at history, there's always been an event, right? Like World War II was like the event for industrial age and industrial revolution. And if you go back and look, there's all like agrarian culture to industrial culture, like to the age of technology that we're in today. COVID was the catalyst. Like the day the people are requiring, they are asking for, they are demanding companies to show up differently, right? But as individuals, we show up and we're making these demands, but what are we bringing to the table? What do we have to offer that should help and facilitate that change? We've got to decouple these responsibilities and start abdicating responsibilities to a company, to a spouse, to a partner, to a group of friends, whatever that is, a leader should what? That's an expectation that they know what the heck they're doing. Just because they're in a role that, generally how that progression happens is they end up in a role because they were technically, right, a good producer, right? They have a specialty or they're a technician in a role and they become responsible for a group of people doing the thing. That doesn't mean that they know how to lead a group of people, right? They might know how to manage, but they may not know how to lead. And so don't come to the table with those expectations, right? Those are your expectations. So what does it mean for you to take responsibility? And look, I know this is harsh, but that when I think about how frequently, and I was guilty of this as well, how frequently we go to an organization with these expectations, not understanding who we are as an individual and what we bring to the table. Now, don't get bent out of shape on that either, right? That we get big-headed and we get blown up on what qualities we have, but we've at least got to start picking at and decoupling, like, what are our responsibilities and what are we capable of? A lot of folks are settling for, right? And this is what gets us in that position. We talked about it a lot last week, but I just fired up this morning about responsibility, about abdication, and about, perspective and possibilities. Frequently, when we get stuck doing a thing for any length of time, it limits our scope on what else is possible for us, right? That there is a marketplace full of possibility out there, right? Just because of how you've been adding value and the skills that you have been done a certain specific way, that there are an immense amount of possibilities on how that could be repackaged and applied differently, and your value add goes up significantly. But some of that is being exposed to that, right? And it's difficult to be exposed to something if we're restrained by limiting beliefs and limited perspectives. So well, Dave, how do I get exposed to it? Well, ask more questions, ask better questions, right? Bring questions and the results of those questions to people that maybe are leaders in the organization. Or here's a great idea, maybe look outside of your organization for other people who might have a different perspective on how you might be able to add value. And look, like this abdicating responsibility, these gaps are generally gaps that a person that I have. So if I just throw myself under the bus, if I'm constantly abdicating responsibilities and leadership at work, I'm probably doing the same thing at home, right? Like just give me some grace there, right? Don't put those walls up, right? Like don't start building bricks. Don't start building bricks. Like keep an open mind here in the sense that look at your own patterns, your own behaviors, your own habits, and see where those things might be restricting you across the board, right? Not just at work, but who I am as an individual. What is it that I carry to work with me? What is it that I carry home? Who am I, period, right? Who am I, period? And those behaviors and patterns and habits that show up everywhere, the limited beliefs, limited perspective, limited exposure, which limits our possibilities. When we limit our possibilities, we stay stuck, right? And then that leaves us prone to things like layoffs, right? Which are like, oh, how did this happen? It came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere, right? Like if we're not limited by what we're paying attention to, it didn't come out of nowhere. Like generally speaking, the patterns and habits that lead to divorce, that stuff's been on the wall forever, right? Like the writing has been on the wall. The patterns and habits that leads to organizations having to downsize, that writing's been on the wall. It's maybe I don't want to accept it. Maybe I don't want to face that truth. Maybe that's hard to look at, right? But the reality is the patterns and habits have been there, right? They've been there. The writing has been on the wall. but we've got to look at it. We've got to recognize, we've got to open our eyes and see with a broader perspective on what's really going on instead of this narrow scope, right? Growth happens in cycles, in people, on teams, and in organizations. We don't have to be a victim either intentionally or unintentionally to the circumstances, but that requires us to take ownership. That requires us to stop abdicating responsibility and abdicating leadership across the board, right? I didn't say that this is easy. It's simple, but it is not easy. So please today, don't be blindsided by a layoff. Don't be blindsided by the writing that's on the wall that we don't want to look at, right? It's in my heart, like I'm physically and emotionally in turmoil over how many people are just sitting ducks, right? So please, I love you. Open your eyes, reach out, right? Reach out. It doesn't have to be me. There's plenty of people. I see Robert Carlson's on here, good friend of mine. Reach out to Robert, right? Like if you're not following Robert, follow Robert on Facebook, on Instagram, look him up, follow him. Tons of leadership. This dude from a systems perspective and a leadership perspective and like a theory, like Siri jumped in the middle of my, she was taking direction. So eat, sleeps, and breathes this stuff, right? There is a vast amount of people out here that want to help, right? That want to breathe life back into you, back into your team, back into your organization. And there's plenty to go around, right? There are plenty of people that just are hurting. And there's plenty financially. There's plenty of organizations who are looking for people just like you, but you have to know how to position yourself and what it is that you have to offer for them, what problems you're solving. So that's it. I know I rambled. I love you. Please open your eyes. Wake up. There's never been a better time. The job market is white hot. It is white hot. There are so many companies out there that are looking for valuable people. But the days of settling for and being able to pay high wages or retirement plans, pensions is the word I was looking for like those days are gone. Companies can't survive on that. They can't. It is a non-sustainable method, right? That's why very few companies offer it anymore. And having a 30-year tenured employee, there's a ton that comes with experience, right? There's a plus side, but there's generally always a negative side to that as well, right? So be all in. Be all in on you. Figure out what that differentiation is. Make yourself the business. If you were your own business, how would you show up today? If you were responsible for the business of insert your name, right? Sarah, Mark, John, Matt. Wow, I just went through the disciples here. Right. If you were responsible for the business of you, how would you show up today? How would you show up today at work? How would you show up today with your family? If you were responsible for the business of you, what would that look like? Right? Maybe take an objective view to that, right? So again, I love you. Have a great Tuesday, and we'll talk again soon. See you.